Okay, just checking the mic. We didn't want to start until Cindy got here. Welcome to the Salt Lake City Planning Division Historic Landmark Commission, and this is Wednesday, August 1st, and we welcome you, whether you're here in person or if you're in virtual outer space, or watching us from Gay Paris. Go USA. USA. Okay, good. All right, so tonight, what do we have here? We have to find out if we have a quorum, which I do believe we do. Roll call, John.
Here.
Thanks, John. Mike. Here. And we got a card. That's nice. Adrian.
Here.
Carlton.
Here.
Amanda. Here. Jared.
Here.
Alan.
Here.
Ta-da, we have a quorum. That's awesome. Okay. Then what do we have here? I will call this meeting to order now that we have a quorum. And do we have any information from, no, let's not do that yet. How about minutes? Have we reviewed the minutes? And if so, can I have a motion or any changes you might want? Nope. Yes? No? Someone gonna make a motion? Okay. John, you wanna make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
Thank you. All right. You move to accept the minutes? Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call votes. Again, sorry. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Mike? He was absent. Adrian?
I was also absent, abstain.
Okay. Carlton?
Aye.
Amanda?
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Jared?
Yes.
Alan?
Aye.
Great. Minutes pass. Do we have any reports? I don't have any report from me or Vice Chair. Do we have any reports of the director's land of planning over there? Hello.
Hi. There are a couple things I'd like to go over. So
Great.
there is a retreat that staff is planning, I think for next month in September. So if anybody has any specific requests that you would like training on or topics for discussion, please let Michaela know. Send those over to her and she will get planning. And then just to inform you all, we have kicked off our mixed use zoning consolidation project. It is a massive overhaul of 27 of our commercial and mixed use and form-based zones. So yeah, it affects a large swath of the city. And so please feel free to go on our website to check out the project. We have a number of walking tours throughout the city as well as open houses. So please feel free to get involved. Okay.
Great. Anything
Thank you.
else?
No.
Nope. All right.
Can I ask a question,
Perfect.
actually?
Do you have any questions?
I had a question. Is there anything that's disclosable in terms of developments related to the Fifth Ward Meeting House?
That's a stunner.
So the only development that we are aware of is that, I guess it's a non-development, is that we haven't received any applications from the owner yet, and the property was recently sold.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Do we have a date for that September? Did you call it retreat? Okay.
Well, would it be our regular meeting?
I believe it would be the regular meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
I
would
guess
be,
when you said retreat, I was like, is that a different day or is it the same?
It's
Okay.
typically not off-site. It's here. We just like the fancy word retreat.
That's
Yeah,
given that, what would that date be? September,
I can pull that up.
is that the last Thursday of the month?
Be September 5th.
September 5th is my birthday, so I'm not sure I'll be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see. Okay. Groovy. Any other questions? All right, do we have any general public comments? Anybody who wishes to make a comment on anything not related to our hearings tonight? Could give us an update on the Olympics. Where's the mayor? I don't know. Anything you want to talk about? Anybody out there? Okay, well then let's get going. Opening our public hearing, and our first public hearing tonight is the addition modifications for Salisbury Mansion at approximately 547 East, 100 South. Case number PLNHLC 2024-00621. Our planner is Sarah, and the presenter is Brandon Harris. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This is for modifications to the Salisbury Mansion, which is located at 574 East, 100 South. And so the previous approval was a connecting feature and an addition to the mansion. The request tonight is for a minor alteration to remove spandrel glass on the connecting feature and the addition, and staff is recommending approval. As far as the proposed modification, the request is to change the spandrel glass to brick on the floor, between the floors on the connecting feature and also on the addition. And it's also to change the spandrel glass to brick at the roof line on the connecting feature. And the proposed changes are to simplify construction and improve drainage.
Do we have any photos?
Sure. This is the site taken a few weeks ago. Oh, sorry.
That's why I asked the question.
Okay, let me go back. So
There we go.
kind of introductory slide, sorry about that. Then the connecting feature showing the proposed change from the glass to the brick. The original drawing is on the bottom, the revised drawing on the top. And then photographs of the site. So they have the existing mansion on the left, the connecting feature shown in the center there, and then the addition is further under construction and shown on the right. And so this project has had some previous approvals. It was originally approved by the HLC in 2017. There were some administrative changes to the approval in 2018 and 2019. And then an additional modification was approved by the commission in 2021. And there's a discussion of these attached to the staff report, including the previous staff reports, and then a summary of the administrative changes. And so staff is recommending approval of the proposed changes. That concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is here and wishes to speak.
Great. Do we have any questions for staff yet? Okay, then let's go ahead and bring the applicant up. And the applicant is Brandon Harris. Hello, Phil.
Brandon Harris works with us.
Okay.
Thank you so much for hearing me, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I appreciate your time. We had a...
Can you press?
Got it. Turn on your microphone. There
Can you hear me
go.
now?
I can hear you now.
We had an unfortunate set of events. The architect itself and our owner, who we're building for, has made so many modifications to the plans, and you can see over the years has been to you so many times that in the time period that we started the project and now the architect has passed away. The architecture firm was Smith Hyatt. They're no longer in business. Amazing architect, but we spent about $500,000 on plans only because the building was redrawn 14 times. This was the final iteration that was approved, and the problem with the spandrel glass is not the spandrel glass. The problem with the spandrel glass is that they created no parapet on the wall itself, so the glass goes to the roof line, and even if we angle the water off the roof, or ice or water will roll right down the front of the spandrel glass.
No, that's not good.
We have zero support and no parapet within the system of the wall, and so we made the decision that it'd be better to tie the brick in from the original building back to the new building, but it is still the delineation between the new brick and the original building, and to create the parapet so that we can drain water off the other side of the roof. And so these changes for us made sense. You also can't physically do spandrel glass to a flat wall. you have to have something that carries over it or above it. And so,
What is spandrel glass? Sorry, I'm not an architect.
it's glass panels that are connected together through an inside system, but they come to a flat top. And you can pour usually like a metal cap over it, but in this original design, it showed that the spandrel glass ended at the top of the roof.
That doesn't sound right. Good, okay. Anything else?
That is all at this. I would like to ask another question, and you can say no. On the original building, they have and she's gonna be mad at me because this wasn't part of it. They have precast in there, but the sandstone that we took off the building originally, that's absolutely gorgeous. We would like to use that sandstone as the band to kind of show that there is something old with something new on the two white bands, and I'm sure I'm gonna have to fill out another application, so I'm sorry, probably just threw that in.
So it's the white.
I'm trying to buy 2 cars for 1 price.
I get it. So it's the white sandstone,
Yes, it's the sandstone that's on the, it's like a tan or a cream sandstone.
but it's not your regular red sandstone. I was literally there yesterday filming the back of the property to point out in a TikTok that I'm doing about how the sandstone is black from the coal dust that we used to have, and it's really evident and a wonderful picture to point out to people of how bad our air used to be.
They had an incinerator in the basement, and it was a funeral home.
I know, I was in
So-
there, and they still had some of the funeral bits down there. It was kind of scary.
Did you see the bed? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they all want to keep it there. They just want to when people come in, they want to scare them.
Yeah. What is the point? Is this just a connector building, or are there actually going to be offices on these 2 levels?
No, the 2 levels are family dining and an activity room.
Okay, great.
So they're for assisted living people to be able to congregate together and eat all their meals together. And then the upstairs is for exercise and activities.
Great. Anything else?
That's all.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
So the brick that's going in place of the spandrel panels is the same as the brick on the addition, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the windows will still match the modern window or the new windows, but they're aluminum clad Pella windows. They'll match in that other section.
Great.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm curious. Did you look at any? Did you look at the option of keeping the spandrel glass and somehow either raising it and putting a wall behind it or whatever it would take to keep the spandrel glass and still manage the drainage problems?
Unfortunately, I don't see how and you may feel differently, how the spandrel glass ties into the feeling of this building. This building is more like a grand mansion or a home, and this is a stark contrast to that. So not only for design purposes, but also for utilitarian reasons, that's why we've made the change, or requested to make the change.
Any other questions?
Yes, with the change from glass to brick, is there a change in how it connects to the mansion and the older structure?
No, it's still the same way. It still connects in. So even with the spandrel glass, there's some back framing that needs to be created to be able to attach the spandrel glass. In this case, we'll put ledgers on and lay brick in that area, and then the brick will be proud of the windows. And even with that flat face that's exposed in the middle, it will protect the windows from always looking bad. I mean, every time it rains, they're going to be done with the original design.
Thank you.
What's your ETA on completion?
14 years.
Well, it's been a long project.
About a year and a half probably still, only because it's hard to get electrical panel and materials.
Sure. Great. Any other questions? Then I will open this up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will open this up. Is anyone here from the Community Council? Then we do have one comment from one person from the public, Cindy Cromer.
So,
state your name for the record.
Yes, I'm still Cindy Cromer, and the Keith Brown Mansion on South Temple is widely recognized as the most important work of Frederick Hale. This building would be a close second in terms of its prominence and who O.J. Salisbury was. So I have to confess that I don't remember the black glass, and I was here in 2017 and 2021. It was a very bad idea. Anything harsh black like that, particularly north-facing, which is, the applicant said, is going to get very dirty because our storms come out of the northwest in the winter. So it would have been a maintenance headache. I'm sick of black. I'm dressed in black tonight, you notice, but I'm sick of black. First of all, compliments to the applicant for coming back to the commission instead of just making the changes. A half a block away, there are some townhouses where the owners just made the changes without checking in with the commission. The original design was better than what was built. And secondly, I think this is clearly an improvement over the original proposal, and it sounds like it will function better in terms of the maintenance of the building. I am concerned about how long this building has been under construction, fenced, and vulnerable. It is less than a block away from the nightmare of Madsonia Court, which is a regular target for graffiti artists, and I think they make stops either before or after at the Salisbury Mansion. So I am very concerned about the vulnerability of this structure, but please send the applicant along his way, and I hope his request about the sandstone can be handled administratively. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. Anyone else choose to speak, wants to speak? Staff, do we have any emails on this? Nada. All right, then I'm closing the public hearing, and normally would have some kind of rebuttal. Would you like to rebut anything?
Cindy's so nice. And dressed so nice. And go USA.
All right, then. We only have the one card from Cindy. Yeah. Okay, so let's all discuss then. Or make a motion.
If I may, Chair
Yes,
DeLay,
please.
the proposal for the inclusion of the sandstone on site, that would need to be handled,
Separately.
yeah, unfortunately, but that's something that we could look at a staff level likely.
So we don't need to deal with that tonight, is what you're saying?
No, you
All righty.
can't.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Commissioners? Commissioners?
Make a comment.
Comment, yes?
I like what's been done, and I like the fact that the addition is respectful to the original intention of the ordinance line that's
Okay. Were you on microphone with that? No. Want to say that again?
As much as I can remember, I like the proportions of the addition. I think they're respectful to the original mansion. In particular, the cornice line has been maintained from left to right. It doesn't try to replicate the original fenestration, the detailing and stuff. So it's very easy to see what's old, what's new, and that's appropriate on this. And I'm in line with the motion to approve in accordance with the staff recommendation.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Well, why don't ya?
All right, so in accordance with the staff recommendation, motion to approve, based on the information presented and the discussion we've had, I move that the commission approve this minor alteration application as recommended by staff.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Perfect. We have a motion with a second. Do we have any discussion? We have a phone call. No. It's the mayor. So let's go ahead and take a vote then. John,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Adrian,
Aye.
Carlton,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Jared,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
and do I vote Do I vote? Sure, I'll vote. Yes, it's unanimous. It passes. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Get her done. Get her done. Okay. Next, we have nothing. We have a work session. Okay. And our work session is on major. Oh, goody. So, yes. Oh, okay. Work session is for, the first one is major alterations briefing for Pioneer Park Phase 1 at approximately 350 South, 300 West. Case number PLNHLC 2024-00789 and 00790. Nan is our planner that has done this work here. So
I'm actually covering for Nan.
You're
this
covering for
evening.
Nan. All
Yeah.
right. Well, go ahead and cover.
Okay. So this is a request for 2 major alterations for Pioneer Park for Phase 1. And for this work session, we're hoping to have a discussion on the design so that it can be finalized and returned to HLC for a decision. The 2 major alteration applications for the improvements include a pavilion, a ranger station, a playground, and the reconfiguration of the hardscape and landscape in the park. This work session request is specifically to answer 2 questions so that staff can gain better direction and that the Public Lands Division can finalize the design. The 2 questions are on this slide. So first being, does the Ranger building meet the guidelines of the Pioneer Park CLR, namely appropriate materiality, transparency, articulation, and form? And second, do the proposed new buildings, both the Ranger building and the pavilion, appropriately meet standard 8 and 21A 34020 G8 for contemporary designs? Excuse me. If the Ranger building is, quote, compatible with the size, color, material, and character of the property, neighborhood, or environment. So just a little background. Y'all know Pioneer Park, but just briefly, it is located approximately 350 South, 300 West. It does encompass an entire city block, and it was the city's first park to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and is also a local landmark site. This is the first phase of improvements for Pioneer Park, and located on the north portion of the park and includes approximately 3.5 acres. It's for Phase 1. Currently, there are mature trees, open fields, a tennis, bocce ball, and volleyball courts, and it is home to many community events. So the changes to the site design and the hard surfacing include, actually I'll just back up a little bit. So the CLR was heard by this commission in 2023 and was adopted. The Pioneer Park CLR and a cultural landscape report, just as a quick reminder, prescribes guidelines for alterations to this landmark site that the proposed Phase 1 improvements may be weighted against.
This map, I'm confused. Should it be flipped? Because we've got 400 West and then 300 West over here.
This is the northern portion of Pioneer Park. It's just cut.
Oh, I see how we're doing it. Okay.
So it's half of the block.
Sorry.
That's okay. The interior circular ring facilitating pedestrian movement will remain on the site, as will the exterior circular pedestrian ring and cardinal access from the exterior to the interior ring. Phase 1 improvements will include expanding the hard surface circulation in the park to include a meandering hard surface walkway. This walkway will also facilitate food trucks. The topography of the park will remain the same, and while hard surfacing in the park will increase, it does meet the recommended maximum stated in the CLR. It appears to staff that the recommendations in the CLR are being met with the proposed site design alterations. So next, the pavilion. This is a major focus of the landmark site and will be placed in this northern area. This will also facilitate public or private events in Pioneer Park. And it's approximately 150 feet by 30 feet, encompassing approximately 4,500 square feet. It will have a rolling form constructed of standing seam metal roofing and tube steel oriented to the south lawn and the north lawn areas. And now the Ranger Building. The land use is a restroom, a park ranger station, and a maintenance. The size is approximately 1,080 square feet, and it will be oriented toward the north and the east. The material includes a painted steel awning, and it's proposed to be along the north and east facades. And those facades allow access to the public restrooms and the Ranger Hub. This tube steel awning will reflect the design of the pavilion to the east. The west and the south facades will have minimal architectural articulation and will generally only consist of building access for mechanical and maintenance facilities. The majority of the exterior of the building will be cast in place concrete with an accent wall highlighting restroom entries. Perforated metal screening will be located at the Ranger Hub and kiosk. Transparency has been a sticking point with this building. The CLR guidelines recommend that a minimum of 60% transparency is maintained. This is not currently being met and will need to be updated prior to the design returning to HLC. So the playground and the water feature, these will be located west of the Ranger Building and the pavilion. The existing park features, the bocce ball, volleyball, and tennis courts will all be removed. And the water features are proposed to the north of the pavilion and just south of the promenade. In this 30% plan set, the water feature will consist of a mist fountain. The final design of these features will receive direction from the Salt Lake City Arts Council prior to the final design returning to this commission. Okay, for our discussion topics, back to those two original questions that I proposed at the beginning of this presentation. And I can pull this slide back up after the additional.
Okay, so the first question, let's deal with that. Meet the guidelines of the Pioneer Park CLR, appropriate materiality. So the materiality is concrete. It's a concrete box, and it doesn't have a lot of transparency.
That's correct.
You said the rules are 60%. What's it at right now?
Nancy can answer that question. So I think the best approach would be have parks
Okay.
and their consultants provide their presentation.
Okay, we'll get all of that.
And then come back to these questions,
Okay,
if that's okay with the.
that sounds like a plan. Okay.
Okay.
So do we have any questions for staff before we bring up the rest of the folks?
Are the two major applications the two buildings? Okay, I just want to make sure.
And the site changes.
So why are there? What are the two specifically major alteration?
So I think I can look to see how we separated it out, but there are two applications right now. I'm assuming for the one for the new buildings and then one for the site changes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
I had a note to share, but I don't know if now is the appropriate time or not, Kelsey. I'll just mention it, and then you can say whether or not this is something worth writing down. But I was looking at the map, which you had on the site design slide, which is also on page 3 of the staff notes, and just looking at the legend, number 8, it says turf, and I just wanted to make a note that, like, turf has a lot of disadvantages. So it contributes to microplastics being in the environment as well as in the water. Did you want to say something? I have more things.
No, turf is a general word
Okay,
for,
so it wasn't like artificial turf.
No,
Okay, I
no.
just want to make sure that it's
typically like low
Okay, cool.
growing grass. but
great.
Architects like to label it turf.
Okay.
Don't look at me.
I just want to make sure it's not going to be artificial because
No.
there are a lot of negative
We made those
aspects of that.
landscaping changes to our ordinance that artificial turf wouldn't be permitted in this.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so no turf, so why don't we bring up the rest of the gang here? I can't tell you how many charrettes over the years I've been on with Pioneer Park, and the ideas and the plans have changed 1,000 times. And here we are now. Hello, can you all introduce yourselves? You gotta turn on the mics and you gotta be close to the thing, the microphone itself.
I'll start.
Okay,
Commission members, thank you so much for having us here today.
a little
to-
closer, gotta be loud.
Little closer. Can you hear me?
Bring the
Yes.
thing to you. There you go.
I think I'm almost swallowing it now.
Okay. How it works.
Okay. I am Nancy Monteith. I'm the Senior Landscape Architect in the Public Lands Department, and I want to thank you for having us here for this work session. We really want to incorporate your feedback, particularly on a site such as Pioneer Park and with the architecture. We are really excited about this design, and so we're looking forward to your feedback. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am Nate King. I'm with Sporano Moody Architecture. I am, joined by Ann Moody. She can introduce herself as well. But we're leading the effort on the pavilion and ranger station that we'll be discussing tonight.
I'm Ann Mooney. Thank you.
23.
Okay.
So we're just going to pull up a few pages from the packet that should be in your memo. So this work, we have funding to do substantial improvements in Pioneer Park. To do that, we held a visioning planning session with the community, with several visits in Pioneer Park and also with stakeholders, internal and external, that this work really comes on the heels of both that community vision and the cultural landscape report, both which have been presented to historic landmarks in the last 2 years. The program includes a signature pavilion, restroom, and ranger kiosk, and a new playground, a food truck promenade, seating areas, water-wise ornamental plantings, and more than 70 new trees. Guidance for circulation, trees, furnishings, and playground were further informed by public lands operations and maintenance staff needs and standards. The goal for these improvements is to create a downtown urban park that works for the big day and the everyday, to create a park that creates a welcoming neighborhood public asset that can host events large and small and also work for the afternoon. We've included features to support this goal. Go to the next page. So here is an image of the existing conditions and kind of the key criteria from the cultural landscape report that applied. A cultural landscape report, the National Park Service has established the standards of cultural landscape reports, and that report provided specific guidance on topography, circulation, vegetation, and compatible alterations in addition. In addition, Public Lands is also seeking site certification for this project, which is a corollary to LEED, so advancing sustainability. One thing to note is the design team worked closely with urban forestry to understand the tree condition and tree protection strategies to minimize impacts to trees. So this greatly informed where we located all of the features to minimize removal of trees and to maximize their protection. And the Urban Forestry Department, the site's requirements for tree protection exceeds the city standards. So we feel really good about that. We can
The
go to
city that
next
just
slide.
killed all the trees on North Temple?
So we also have presented that cultural landscape report. Let's see, I need to go down in my notes here. So this diagram is really the kind of the analysis of the paving. And what it shows is there's 4 different kind of symbols there. And it's calculating the amount of existing impermeable paving that's removed and the amount that's being added. And the goal that we're trying to stay is under 25% so that it is largely a softscape park and consistent with the Americanization period. There will be some other, so the major circulation that's required for access for events or maintenance needs to be concrete. Pedestrian circulation will be softer surfaces, and we're exploring options with that, softer permeable surfaces. So we can go to the next slide. So the site plan shows the layout of the circulation with the architectural features. And then we've also added as many new trees as feasible. You'll notice that there are no trees north of the food truck promenade, which is that kind of curved element at the top. And that is because there is a requirement to have 10 feet clear around food trucks. So what we did instead to bring the scale down was to bring the plantings very close to that space to bring it down to scale. And then I think with this, I will turn it over to Nate King with Sperano Mooney.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. So, as was briefly introduced by Kelsey, we'll be focused on two architectural elements this evening. We have a 4,500 square foot open air pavilion and a 1,000 square foot building that includes 5 restrooms, a maintenance storage element, and a ranger office, ranger hub space. One thing to note, these elements are the result of a multitude of meetings and work sessions with public lands, with feedback from urban forestry, parks, city events, in addition to maintenance and the park rangers department. So we'll begin with the pavilion, but you can see the restroom building here to the left in this image and kind of the relationship and plan shown.
But that is also the ranger station?
It is. So within this one building, it houses the restrooms, ranger, and maintenance space, correct? So working with public lands, the goal of this project, really specifically speaking of the pavilion, was to create an iconic structure that will accommodate a wide variety of different uses and events. So with regard to form, for the pavilion, the concept was generated working closely with these user groups, including city events. And you can see the architecture is comprised of a single undulating form that incorporates 2 kind of high points to the north and 1 gesture to the south. And the idea being that with this smaller space, you could feasibly have two smaller events to the north, 1 larger to the south, depending on anticipated attendance. Let's go to the next slide. So with regard to materiality, the pavilion is comprised of a series of tube steel columns, approximately 12 by 12, set at 25-foot spacing, with a primary girder running the full length, supporting the pavilion form. The undulating pavilion plane is comprised of HSS tube steel beams set at varying angles that rest on top of this primary girder. Go to slide 8 here. So after much discussion, there was a desire by the stakeholder group for the roof of the pavilion to be solid or impervious, so not to allow rainwater to penetrate through the roof. The roofing material, as was mentioned by Kelsey, is proposed to be a standing seam metal panel. These standing seams will be another representation and similar pattern to the tube steel members below the roof. So this kind of repeating form on the roof.
Will it have lighting?
Yeah, actually, I know that's a really fun part of it. I'm going to get to in a minute. And to differentiate the curvilinear form from the overhead plane between the base, it's proposed to paint these two different colors. So a darker gray for the columns and primary girder, so that this undulating form that creates the roof kind of differentiates itself from the base. So that would be painted a white color. And following up on that, this is one very interesting design point that we've incorporated. The primary girder, it's the center of the pavilion, functions as the primary structural support, but also functions as our electrical raceway. So all of the lighting has been housed within this beam. We have safety down lighting that will be on the bottom, and then we have accent LED lighting that will be side, so we can illuminate the underside of the pavilion depending on, and could even potentially incorporate some color depending on event. But lighting's been a pretty big discussion on this project. So that's the pavilion. I think we'll go to the restroom building and then circle back for comments on each. And to kind of start, this is an important diagram. So with the pavilion being the architectural focus of the park, the restroom building intentionally utilizes a smaller scale to be both subservient to and also exhibit more of a human scale within the site. Really, the focus of the project is intended to be the pavilion, and the restroom building becomes support for the project. So we'll go to 12 here. We want to highlight a few important ideas from the SLC Design Guidelines, Chapter 13, new construction, but also the Cultural Landscape Report that was generated for Pioneer Park. 13.8, this idea of bringing the sense of human scale. So we incorporated a 14-foot max height used for the restroom building. 13.9 reflects the character of roof forms in the area. It talks about flat roof forms being appropriate. 13.15, overhangs, projections, and reveals to create light and shadow patterns are encouraged. 13.20, so with regard to materiality, having a proven durability that we'll get into a little bit more. And the Cultural Landscape Report, a few key ideas. It's noted that the design should be a clear record of its time, place, and use, and not create a false sense of historical development. Should not seek to reconstruct or otherwise recreate structures that no longer exist. So just a couple of notes to keep in mind as we move into some more of the design on the Ranger Hub. So from a design standpoint, we created a subtle relationship between the pavilion and restroom building through the use of similar materials. This includes exposed HSS tube steel members that create the primary framing for the pavilion and overhead shade element for the restroom building. Architecturally, the repetition of the HSS tube steel on the pavilion is reinforced on the restroom building, both in scale and color. Given the program for the restroom building, there's a clear public face oriented to the north where the restrooms are and to the east. So I don't know if you can see my marker here. Yeah, so the east, this would be the Ranger Hub. North, this is the restroom building. So there was a desire to really, these kind of visual cues that this is the public side of the building and the side that you are to approach. And maintenance, storage, and mechanical plumbing program make up portions of the south and west that we'll look at in a moment. The primary material proposed for the restroom building is a cast-in-place concrete that will receive a painted finish. Based on preliminary discussions with planning, which is NAN, this also has a relationship to cementitious plaster that was historically used in this area. This also provides a durable, robust exterior material that is tamper resistant and easy to maintain. We have proposed a splash of color to be introduced on the north where the restrooms are located. The west facade includes access to the mechanical plumbing space, and the overhead coiling door you can see here on the south is access to maintenance storage. You can see the south portion of the Ranger Hub can be seen on the right with perforated operable shades that allow the windows to be protected and provide additional articulation to this facade. 19. So just a perspective from the northwest shows the relationship between the pavilion and the restroom building. And again, in addition to the HSS roof element providing an overhang projection, it also contributes to the exterior materiality through the use of light and shadow. with that, we very much appreciate you taking the time to participate in this work session tonight. We welcome any questions, comments.
Questions for staff? I have a few. When is the ranger station open? Is it open 24/7?
It is not open. It will not be open 24/7.
Okay.
What
so-
the ranger program, they have hubs that they in each part of the city, and they use that as a base point, and then they will also do some programming out of that space. So they will use it as their base, and then also be in parks within the vicinity.
Can you go to the previous slide that just shows the ranger station? So let's see, my office has been in this neighborhood for the last 25 years or so, and I've lived in this area for a long, long time and have witnessed massive crime and watched a stabbing outside my building that I had to actually go to court and testify against the 5 people involved. So I know a lot about this neighborhood, and I've been in a million meetings about it. That building to me looks like a giant billboard for graffiti. The windows themselves look like they will be busted out at every week, just by people that aren't mentally stable, because that happens in our neighborhood constantly. The glass itself, will it be protected at night? The other side where you had the water fountains, next to it seems to be a long trough, which to me says, oh, if I'm unsheltered, maybe I can take a bath there. Happens all the time. Any kind of water feature is going to be used as bathing possibilities for the unsheltered. Those things worry me a lot, but the building just, to me, stands out as a big ugly box that's going to have graffiti on it at all times. That's my 2 cents worth.
We did, excuse me for loud noise. We have thought about that too, especially the facades that are more blank. It could be an opportunity. We have public art, and we haven't yet selected a public artist.
That
and
would be great, but that should be a priority, because graffiti artists are less likely to damage public art.
Right.
But I don't see any of that in here. And
Right.
this, again, to me says, mess with it, and the neighbors will.
And we have had our office in that neighborhood for many years too. It's not there currently, but we understand.
Where is the signage? There's no signage on your renderings.
We have developed signage in another project, but they are not in this.
And remember where we are in the design process also. We haven't finished the design. This is our working session, and these renders are also preliminary.
Okay. How many food trucks does that area hold?
8.
Just 8. And how are food trucks chosen? Don't know. That's okay. Why does the building have such low transparency?
Yeah, kind of a nature of the program being primarily restrooms, maintenance, storage, and mechanical space. And to respond to a couple of those too, I think it would be good. That had come up quite a bit as far as being more tamper resistant. We did incorporate some of these operable coverings that would help protect the windows to essentially be able to close the building down when needed. So at least not be able to break them. And actually we thought about that as well, adjacent to this, which would be the sinks. There's a desire to have these as single stall toilets and incorporate the hand washing stations outside. You can see a small hint of it. There's an overhead coiling door that is intended to be implemented there. So seasonally, it can be completely shut down and even potentially.
So there's only one public toilet in the neighborhood on North 5th West, behind the train station there. And that specifically was researched for actually a couple of years as to what would be the best public toilet. And the toilets all, that toilet, you can see people's from their knees down. And so, again, this looks like, oh, hey, it's only going to fit 1. Trust me, it'll fit 4, and they'll be doing drugs in there. There's no windows. You don't know who's in there. You don't know how long they're in there. they could be sleeping in there overnight. I mean, this to me is just such a nightmare of policing.
I think that's something we could incorporate as lifting up the lower.
Well, I would talk
Edgefront.
with, I think Camille was one of the ones that really helped put that in, but I would talk to folks about that particular restroom, because it's the only thing we have of its kind. It's also a hub for a whole lot of bad things.
Yeah.
But this is an extra bad thing because you can't see who's in there, how long they're going to be in there.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that. Now, who else has questions? No.
I would just say just a couple comments. I appreciate it. The restroom ranger maintenance building is a tough architectural challenge, and I appreciate that you're using materials that are as durable and as maintenance free as possible, that can be cleaned and hosed down, and I get all of that. I like the fact that you've got the louvers that are going to add some life to the face of the building as the sun, the shadows. That's really great. I'm wondering if there might be some consideration for board forming or scoring or somehow making these big slabs like what you see at the end of the building here a little bit less inviting for graffiti art. I know there's application of stains and things like that you can take the graffiti away with, but just maybe something that adds a little bit more scale to that rather than this big billboard that's just inviting to, you know what I'm saying? The rest of it, I like the color, just introducing color, so that's great. The use of the mesh at the windows, so you've got the passive air going through, well done. So I think that's good. On the really positive side, on the pavilion, I like, if I'm going to describe the pavilion, I would say playful, open, signature. I think the concept drawing that you have is really nicely done. I suspect when a structural engineer gets a hold of it, there's going to be a little bit more structure at the edges and how the standing metal seam turns the corner and clips back and allows for expansion and such. But thank you. That's well done. As nice as I think the pavilion building is, I think maybe there's a little bit more detailing on the concrete slabs of the restroom ranger maintenance building that might help your cause.
And I would add on that, just to echo concrete is easy to remove graffiti from, at least, right? But public art, in my experience, and there's a lot of research that shows that will deter a lot of the graffiti too. So I think that would be a good element to include in this as well. So thank you.
Anybody else?
You can go first.
Just kind of echoing what Mike said, I really like the pavilion. I think it's neutral at the same time as it's kind of whimsical and fun.
Is whimsical and fun?
That pavilion?
No, not the pavilion.
Yeah.
The other one.
The restrooms, I do like. I think the north facade and the east facade are pretty nice especially with that kind of canopy shade when it casts light onto the building. That is pretty cool, and it gives it a texture that I think is really nice. But yeah, it is that kind of west facade to me that's a little barren. I think that you talked a little bit about the sense of human scale, and one way of accomplishing that is to make it just a smaller, shorter building. Another way would be to use more textured materials that kind of invite someone to come up to the building and touch it and experience it at a closer proximity. I like the board form idea. I'm a big board form guy, but
just something to break it up so that it's not the big slab.
Yeah,
it looks like a canvas waiting to be painted.
Yeah. I do like the idea of using like kind of or evoking the stucco that was there. I think that makes a lot of sense. If it's well done. but stucco can also just be kind of bland and boring. So that's where I'm at.
So I love Pioneer Park. It has a lot of history associated with it. That block dates back to a week after the pioneers came to the Salt Lake Valley. So as someone who really appreciates the history of that block, I feel like this ranger station doesn't really give what I would want to see in such a historical site. So if you're really committed to this design, maybe you can incorporate your public art to kind of draw back to the old pioneer site. If we're gonna build a structure, I really think that pulling that history and telling a story would be great. And this building doesn't tell the story that this site has in it.
I love that. I was thinking too, there was a school many decades ago that they tore down, and they took the upper parts of it and they threw it down into a design down in Utah County. So when you drive by, you see these turrets, but they came, I'm wondering if we have any old historic parts we could add to it. Because you're right, it has nothing to do with the history. We used to have a train parked in the park, but this is, yeah, it looks like some lay-bad restroom in the middle of some park that has no money to.
Yeah, and this is where the pioneers slept. This was the old fort.
And buried.
Yeah, so there's so much history, and I would love, 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 love to see that in the structures. But
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So you're asking for specifically the pioneer history, or the
yeah, I mean
history
dating back.
before
Yeah,
or
so
since?
this block is on the National Register of Historic Places under the title of Old Pioneer Fort Site. And so the research has been done, the research is publicly available. So you could pull some of that information and just let it inform some of the design decisions.
Yeah. And we did a cultural landscape report, which tells the entire story and the change of the park over time.
Yeah,
That
I just don't
adds
see that
whole-
story in this building.
I think it, you know, I saw some murals in, I think it was Tremonton, where they told the story of Tremonton through murals in their downtown area. The Candy Bomber lived there, you know, and so they had murals of him, right? It really told a whole story about the town. And that could be really interesting to tell the story of the park over time through art on there. You know, that's an interesting opportunity and a great
Well, the
idea.
murals can be anything. That's a wonderful tie-in. I guess what we're saying is this building has no personality. And I think it should.
I mean, I would push back a little bit on that. I think it, like, an example of kind of contemporary, clean, modern architecture done well would be like the Mission 66 program in the national parks, where these visitor centers are very modern, very austere, and it's really the contrast between that kind of brings out the history and the natural beauty of the surroundings. Like I don't want the architecture team to feel like they have to replicate a pioneer building, for instance. I think that's a pretty
Right, and I
bad
think the
idea.
other thinking that we had during the design process is to celebrate the pavilion, and the other building is sort of back of house, it's functional. So we didn't want them to compete with one another. So we do have to be careful, although we appreciate these comments, and I think there's some detailing that's missing, there's some materiality, there's potentially a great opportunity for art and the history to be told through the whole site and certainly on that building.
Want to change the roof line on this to sort of interact with the other one?
I wouldn't, because I think they'd start to compete.
I believe that.
Yeah.
That's wise.
And I think they do a good job of complementing each other and you know, the ranger station not taking precedence over it. I think you've done well at that, actually. And you know, if you know, one idea for public art is panels that could attach to the structure, and you could change those out. You could, you know, have you know, other rotating things or even text and stories written on there.
There's a panel or a historic plaque, a catty corner from there about this was the first site of irrigation. We have those historic plaques all over, and there could be a whole wall there of historic plaques. Yeah, I think they're getting that message though.
Yeah.
I mean, our deal tonight is to give them suggestions that we have so that they can walk away and incorporate or throw out whatever we say into the next phase. So what would be our,
Can I make a few comments?
Yeah.
There's been a lot going on here, but I just want to follow up that idea about the history because I generally like what I'm seeing. One concern about just the design is that the walls of that Ranger building, it's oriented, the front of the building is oriented to the park, which means the back of the building is facing the public street. And so we've got these blank walls facing the public street. So it's great from inside the park, but then there's just hundreds and hundreds of cars passing and they're seeing the back of the building. So that concerns me. But what concerns me more is, like, this is just a new iteration. I like it. I really like it, but it's a new iteration of Pioneer Park. How many iterations have we seen? And Pioneer Park is the only remaining public square in Salt Lake City. There were, 5 public squares? All West High School was built on one of them. This building was built on one of them. Trolley Square was built on one of them. This is the only public square left. And the one thing that defines it is that it's wide open. And I look at this and I'm like, this could be any park anywhere. Nice, but any park anywhere. And this has the history as the fort, the original location of the settlement of Salt Lake City, which it sort of baffles me that it is so uncelebrated. And then it has this long history as a park. And this pavilion, which is beautiful, is the largest structure, I think, that has ever been on that lot since the fort was torn down. And so it's a pretty major statement. And I'm like, is this just another iteration? It just seems like Pioneer Park gets treated as a blank slate. And every 20 years, we come in and say, oh, we're going to redo Pioneer Park. And it's just another iteration. And it's like, where's the history in all this? And that, as the Landmark Commission, I think that's our responsibility, is saying, well, there is history here, and it's not just a blank slate to do something new on every 20 years. And, what is this? My guess is in 20 years that they'll be talking about replacing this. And I'm not sure what the solution is to that, because this is the nicest thing that I've seen. It's nicer than anything I've seen in Pioneer Park in my time living in Salt Lake. And yet I'm still like, well, this is just another version of Pioneer Park for today, and then we'll move on to the next version of Pioneer Park, and we won't carry any sense of history with us, because this doesn't carry a sense of history with us. It's just sort of the open square is really, the open sort of tree-filled square is really, to me, the only thing that carries a sense of history for this space. And so I guess I would like to see something, and maybe it is some version of what you're presenting, but I'd like to see something that could be carried forward into the future, that would carry a sense of history, not just the history of today, but the history of what came before. And I'm not sure exactly, that does not mean like turning the ranger station into a log cabin.
Yes,
I
but
think
we do have older buildings we could relocate there.
But something that's,
Yeah.
I feel like people pass by this Pioneer Park, and I'm guessing that the majority of people have no idea of the history.
I think you're bringing up a great point, and even the indigenous history should be recognized.
Absolutely.
There's a very long history.
But how are you going to do that?
Well, I think we will brainstorm. I already have a couple ideas.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, and maybe it doesn't all have to be done in what's being done here, but this,
Yeah.
I guess I would like to see, I would love to see it fit into a larger plan.
Exactly.
For
I think that's a
celebrating the history of
conversation
this site.
with our full team.
And then my one last shot is that this is an archaeological site. To my knowledge, they've never done an archaeological dig, but I think it's a matter of time. It may not be in my lifetime.
No, I think they did when they discovered the bones down there.
That was over on the next block. That's where the cemetery was.
Okay.
yeah.
Over where the Marriott is.
Okay.
That's where they did the
good
archaeological dig.
then.
So they've never done an archaeological dig, and there's all kinds of archaeological evidence underneath all of this. And so, I've heard proposals in the past of buildings, like major buildings on this site, and I thought, well, how do you do that without destroying what archaeological record there is? And so I'm also concerned that whatever happens here, and I don't know if that is part of the city plan for this, is that they are watching out for potential damage to the archaeological evidence that is underneath this site.
It could be a recommendation.
Building on what you just said, which I think is very telling, I think there's a bit of storytelling, because when the arborist was here, a year or so ago, there's at least 5 plans that were different, from age to age to age on this particular site. And so maybe, and then also thinking about, how the farmers market uses this, and there's thousands of people that come through here, and they're shopping, but I think there's a way of telling that story, the story you're just talking about. Maybe that's not in your scope right now, but perhaps that could be a part of it, that in a very simplistic way, perhaps, I don't know, somewhat akin to what happens on Regent Street, where there's just small kinds of things. But to your point, there's been so many iterations of what happens here. That might be the story that might be a part of it. So, perhaps that's not a part of the scope right now, but maybe that might be, because I think that story would be interesting for people that, like you say, don't know anything about the history of this park, but could be informed about how long it's been here and how it's changed over the decades.
I like the idea of Regent Street. They've stamped things into the ground,
Yeah.
right? So that could be a really easy way to tell a story without,
Yeah.
Making it all have to be at the ranger station too.
It could be experiential while you're walking through the park.
Yeah.
Experiencing it.
And I think the highest, I live on Pierpont Avenue, mid-block over from this, right? And I think obviously Saturday mornings all summer is the highest number of people that are there, but where the park gets the most use outside of farmers markets is just this area, right? It's the north end of the park, because it's not a noisy street there. You have Caputo's, you have Bruges, you have those restaurants there. So I think telling the story in this northern section of the park is where residents are using it most, because you walk your dog right over there into the park and then loop back around. That's where a lot of the use is, and a great place to tell those stories, and however you brainstorm.
And
to do
they'd
that.
probably be less likely to be vandalized if they were in the ground, like you suggest. I love that idea. Because if we put, how you can do a walking tour of downtown and there's little plaques everywhere and they have graffiti all over them. Well, these probably wouldn't as much. So that's a great idea. Well, our onus is to give some kind of direction to them. So what would be the takeaway for these folks? If we have like 5 things we want them to do.
I was just going to say, consider the history and recognize the legacy opportunity that you have right now.
Okay, good. That's one. Next.
I think addressing those blank walls on the ranger station,
Great.
both as far as, like appearance goes and susceptibility to graffiti.
Mm-hmm. And the bathrooms definitely need to be redesigned for crime. I have been in too many meetings about that. Anything else? That's our takeaway, those 3 things?
I can read back a couple of the notes.
No,
take?
I mean, you can incorporate.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see something incorporated in this that represents the history and maybe provide sort of a kernel for future expansion of telling the story of that square
Well.
throughout the park. But this would be one place to start, since these presumably will be the major structures in the park. So it's maybe a good place to start telling that story.
I think stories old and new too. I think we've got the really old, pioneer stories, but I think in recent years it's really fun to see international climbing events happening at the park, the market every week. I think there's new stories that could be fun to kind of incorporate as well. I know that's not the traditional 50 plus years that we talk about usually, but some of those new stories are fun too.
You know, one of the things, just to talk about that, this area has a lot of springs, and there were some springs just by the Orthodox Church and in the park. And that was what drew people in prehistory, the pioneers, and then the railroad brought all the immigrant communities. And our misting fountain, which is at number 4, is really to have, it's not water per se, it's misting and cooling, but it is to bring that sense of water to the park, that awareness and how that attracts people.
And it's particularly the unsheltered to bathe. Yeah.
Well, this is mist, it's no water.
They'll still be there. The one thing that I keep thinking in the back of my head is what they're doing with Mill Creek and the Mill Creek Square that has so activated that area with the food trucks and the ice skating, and we don't have any of that. I mean, Sugar House Park, nothing. This park, nothing. I always said in the middle, let's do concrete so it's it's used all year round. So in the summer you do in the winter you do hockey of some kind. In the summer you would do roller skating and what is it where they all compete and
Roller derby.
shove each other around. Yeah, roller derbies. So you'd have that in the summer. You do have a lot of activity over there.
But then the bathroom becomes a first aid station.
Exactly. Well, no, that's what the ranger / first aid station there. But I drive by that Mill Creek place all the time. It's like, wow, they have done an amazing job activating that area.
Yeah, they also don't have the railroad station right there. They don't have the railroad tracks, and Pioneer Park is, in the 80s and 90s, that's where you went to buy drugs. So that could be part of the history too. Yeah, I mean, but it's a tough location.
It is, but you can be creative. Again, look at what Mill Creek has done. Anything else that we'd like to give them for suggestions or directions?
I just have another question. Future phases, are we foreseeing a lot more buildings, like vertical buildings, or is this going to be kind of it?
So, no, it would just be these 2 buildings. So that in the vision plan, there's a future off-leash area that you can see indicated there to the right. South of that would be a basketball court, and then in the other corner, the southwest corner, is proposed pickleball. And we are actively pursuing funding in hopes that we can do that as soon as possible. We really wanted to focus the improvements on those facilities that would help bring activation and build on the things that are already working well in the park, and being able to expand those kinds of uses.
And the pickleball should not be near all the condominiums on 3rd South, but more on 4th South because of the noise. You know the noise complaints
For
about
pickleball,
pickleball?
yeah.
Yeah. Massive. It's very loud.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, good. I guess that's all we have for you.
I'll make one other comment, actually, if I can.
Thank you.
Building on the materials real quick. The one thing that struck me when I first saw this was the starkness of the concrete, which has been mentioned before.
Can you put the mic up closer?
Yeah. The starkness of the concrete, which has been mentioned before, and it reminded me of what I would expect to see at Gallivan Plaza or the Natural History Museum, other locations that are arguably more urban. Whereas the materials in this block, and I hear you about the stucco, but the materials that characterize this block in this neighborhood today are primarily brick, red brick on the buildings that surround this block from turn of the previous century. And what did jump out to me in terms of materials and consistency of the materials with the neighborhood's materials is that there was none of that or a hint of that represented. So just one other thought.
You know, I thought about that too, Carlton. Sorry, Babs, we just keep going on about this. But, you know, I thought about that too, but I also, you know, the goals of this is not to recreate something that looks historic necessarily too. That was one thing I was like, I thought about that, and then as I read through everything, I thought, well, I guess that's not our goal to make a structure that looks like it was a part of the warehouse district. But I do think like colors and the storytelling, and there's things we can add to that. You know, maybe instead of a yellow on that, it's more of a red that looks like the color of brick in that neighborhood, things like that. I think Pierpont Urbana did a really good job with their apartments, making it look like it fits in the neighborhood. And then there's other newer apartments that are like painted white and they look totally out of place over there, you know? So I think there's like even just color makes a big difference, I think, in making it look like it fits in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that.
My suggestion isn't that we try to recreate something that looks like it was built in the 20s, but at the same time, there is a character of the neighborhood that we are supposed to be reflecting that doesn't exist here in any way.
Yeah, there's nothing historic about what's being presented. I would agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, like the ranger station, if that were built out of red brick, it would still be very modern, and yet still tie in with the materials. It might be a graffiti problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's things to be balanced there, but I'm with you, Carlton.
All right, one last chance. Comments? All right, Nancy, Nate, Nan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully we won't be seeing you back here anymore. You'll be building this and we're all done. They still got to come back.
Approval.
Oh, for the approval. Okay.
We need your approval at some point.
Oh, great. All right, we have another work session here on the major alteration for Twin Home at approximately 235 South, 600 East. This is case number PLNHLC 2022-01155. As you can see from that number, it's been around since 2022. This proposal is to rehabilitate the historic building there, add an attached garage to the rear of it, and a new home, creating a twin home configuration to the rear of it. And do we have anyone here? Just you. None of the applicants? Nobody else is coming? Applicant, no?
The applicant is not here. I have.
You need to speak really close into that. Yeah.
I have emailed the applicant and emailed him earlier this evening, since I didn't see him here earlier, but I have not heard back from him.
I drive by there 100 times a day, I must say, and they're actually working on it, which is a first. So I was interested to see what they're up to. But go ahead and make your presentation, please.
So just so you know, you do have the option to table this matter
What do you think?
until the applicant can be here, if that is what the commission would prefer.
Right, other than they can hear. Well, all right, how about a straw poll? Your hand up if you'd like to postpone this.
That just be with the idea that the applicant then hears our feedback more directly, or what's
Yeah.
the?
Yeah, I
Be
think
able to
that's
ask
best.
questions. Yeah. This has been around us for some time, so they are working on it now, so I know we're all very interested.
The purpose of work sessions are for the applicant and not for planning staff. Typically, it's so that they can work directly with the commission to get feedback on their design.
Okay.
Yeah.
it typical that they do not reply? Are they usually respond?
They're usually here.
I'm sorry to
yeah.
ask that question, but what's normal for this app?
Normal
Sure.
is they come.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
And we did agree on the date. I just have not heard back from him since the agenda went out.
Has
Yeah.
the applicant changed since they were here? Has the building changed hands?
So there was a previous proposal in 2021, and the ownership has changed since 2021.
Then yeah, I definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why don't somebody make a proposal here, a motion?
I move to table case number PLNHLC 2022-01155 to a later meeting when the applicant is able to attend.
I'll second that.
Great, any discussion? All right, then let's go ahead and vote. John?
Aye.
Mike? Why do I have Kenton on here? Sorry. John, Mike. Adrian?
Aye.
Carlton?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
And I say yes, unanimous, postpone when we can get the applicant here. All right then, so I'm closing the executive session. Do we have any other business? What will we be looking forward to in September? Possibly a retreat? Yeah,
And other stuff.
and other stuff. Is there anything big and ugly coming up this fall that we should be thinking about here?
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
but we get the occasional enforcement case, so
Right?
yeah.
Well, all right.
Thank you.
Without further ado, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.